Okay, welcome everybody. I recognise that we are hosting this webinar from the lands of the Kaurna people and also recognise the traditional owners of the lands where you are working today and the First Nations people present in this webinar. I pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you everybody for participating in our webinar today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Linda Schenk and I am the owner of Purple Giraffe and the co-Deputy Chair of Wine Communicators of Australia. Angus unfortunately couldn't be here today, so he's roped me in on the job. I've been directly involved with WCA for over 5 years now, and it's a fantastic organisation. WCA aims to be the preeminent organisation connecting business professionals working with wine. We engage and inspire our members through the delivery of insightful information and resources in an environment of the wine industry cohorts. This will better enable us to learn and connect with our industry, providing a leadership position in the sustainable development of a world-class Australian wine industry. WCA aims to connect, develop, engage, and inspire Australian industry professionals. We do this through our mentor program, our webinar program, large-scale events such as the Growth Market Summit, which was held in Adelaide a couple of months ago, and the D2C conference being held in Sydney on June 2025. Sorry, not 2025, it's this year on the 25th of June. Wine show lunches will be starting with the Royal Sydney Wine Show, starting at the 16th, or have been held on the 16th of August, Wine Communicator of the Year Awards, and state chapter events. Please consider becoming a member or at least signing up to our newsletter, and you will see all the great stuff that WCA put on. Today, we are hearing from Andrew Nowicki, who is a co-founder and commercial director of Growth Scope. The topic he is presenting is how do consumption occasions influence sales? A presentation that I think we all probably need to hear right now. You will see at the bottom of your screen there is a Q&A button. If you have any questions while Andrew is presenting, please type them into the Q&A while you think of them. Andrew will answer the questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and is being recorded right now, and a link will be sent out to everybody who has registered, so you can watch it again at your convenience. But that's enough from me right now. I'm going to pass you over to Andrew.
Thanks, Linda. Hi everyone, thank you for joining this presentation. Let me take you on the ride and talk about consumption occasions. Hang on, bear with me. As Linda just said, I'm the founder of a company called Growth Scope. My background starts in consumer marketing. I sold candy, confectionery, chocolate, and soft drinks and beer for 25 years as a marketing director and innovation director. I worked here, I worked in Asia, I worked in Europe, I worked across America. So I'm very well versed in working in big multinational companies, in big, fast-moving consumer good categories. And that's what got me into research, and that's what got me into creating Growth Scope. Today we're going to talk about consumption occasions and why they're important, a quick introduction to who Growth Scope is and what we do, and then I'll talk about a framework for defining consumption occasions, and it's just our framework. Lots of people have their own framework, but I'll take you through the one that we have within our generic data set that we sell subscriptions to. Take us through an understanding of a couple of occasions, how they affect sales, how they drive shopping behaviour. I'll stop there for questions and answers, and that'll probably take us to the end of the hour. For any of you that have got a bit of extra time available, I'll then go through a case study that'll take another 15 to 20 minutes afterwards. So if you can't stay for that second case study, don't worry, you'll get the video of it, but if you want to stay, you can stay, and then we can have a more extended Q&A on that as well. So let's talk about occasions, hey? I was recently giving a presentation to some clients, and one of the, well, actually not to some clients, to some prospects, sorry, I'll rephrase that. I was giving a presentation, and the sales director at this particular organisation stood up and he looked at me and goes, "What is all this bloody talk about occasions going on out there? Here we go. Here's a bottle of wine," and he put it on the table. He goes, "Look, I've got a bottle of wine on the shelf. Tell me, how can I market that to an occasion? How does that work? What can I do differently to what I'm currently doing now? If it's on the shelf, it's on the shelf. There's nothing more that I can do." And my comment back to him was, well, the question I've got is, if it's on the shelf, how did it get there in the first place? Is it the right shelf? Is it the right product? Is it the right format? Is it the right price point? Is it in the right position in that store? And does it meet the needs of the person that's shopping there? Or actually, do you know who is shopping for that occasion and why they're shopping for that occasion? At which point he sort of looked at me a bit flabbergasted and sort of threw it back at me and just said, yeah, but I don't have that insight. I don't have that knowledge. That's only for the big boys. There's nothing I can do about it. I sort of took that on board and walked away from that meeting. And what was an aha for me was, this guy talking to me is probably unaware that the likelihood that he's going to continue to maintain the position on shelf for that product is low, because a retailer is nothing more than a real estate agent. They're selling their space to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder is the person that gives them the best margins and the best turnover. And the best turnover comes from, and the best margins comes from, understanding the fundamental need of the shopper and the consumer behind that purchase occasion. And we see that happening through two key data points. The first is 84% of liquor shoppers, from a Circana-based shopper panel survey in 2021, 84% of liquor shoppers had made the decision on what they were going to buy before they entered the store. So by the time they got to the store, there was nothing else that could be done. The decision was already made. And it's the consumption occasion which was the #1 driver of choice for those consumers. And a major retailer and hotelier, I would say one of the biggest, if not the biggest in this country, have made it very clear. From their perspective, they know that consumption occasions are fundamentally important in liquor. When you understand why their customers choose a category, a brand, and ultimately a product to purchase and consume. And their focus on understanding consumption occasions is unwavering. And where does this all come from? You know, is this all new, and is this all new thinking? And I put it to you that it's actually not new at all. If we go to the world's biggest beverage company, occasion-based marketing is fundamental to everything they do. Occasion-based marketing, or what they would call OBPPC, is integral to their DNA, or to their Coca-Cola way of marketing. For each occasion, which is where they start, that occasion defines the optimal brands to be sold in the appropriate packages at the right price through the right channels. And it's the occasion that they use to make the choices of what they're going to sell, where they're going to sell, and how much they're going to sell it for. And it's only by having that understanding of the occasions do you get the magic of the Coca-Cola system coming to life. It's how, on an occasion-based marketing perspective, it's how they're able to get 32 cents for a 12-ounce can in a supermarket and $1.35 for a 12-ounce bottle, per ounce for a 12-ounce bottle in the on-premise. Because what they recognise is that different consumers consume differently for different occasions with a different willingness to pay. And even though it's exactly the same product that they're consuming, they present it in such a way that it meets the needs of that consumer on that occasion, so they can extract the maximum willingness to pay the consumer has for that occasion. And secondarily, it impacts on what they do in store. Any of you who've worked in the Coca-Cola system will know they talk about 7 points of interaction or 7 points of engagement. And in any particular store, there'll be 7 times that you will come across point of sale material or merchandising material or display material for a bottle of Coca-Cola. And that bottle of Coca-Cola will be available as a can, as a multi-pack, as a 1.25 litre, as a 2 litre, as a chilled 1.5 litre, or a chilled 600 ml, or a chilled 220 ml can. Each one of those packs in the same store sold at differential price points, meeting differential needs. And those needs are driven by the occasion that they're shopping for and the occasion that they're looking to consume. And you can see here within the impact on what they believe occasions and occasion mentality enables them to do is shift the demand curve. And by shifting the demand curve, they increase the profitability and the volume consumed for all stakeholders in the category, which makes Coca-Cola the #1 category partner for so many retailers for their beverage needs. And it's occasions that become the fundamental insight that they use to enable that category strategy. Now, I hear you say, yeah, I get that Coke and I get that soft drinks, but what does that mean in liquor? Well, let me tell you, it's not just Coca-Cola that survive on this. Pernod Ricard, one of the biggest wine and spirits companies in the world, at the core of their growth model, talk about moments of conviviality. Moments of conviviality within Pernod Ricard is their speak for occasions. What is the occasion that we're targeting? Having understood that occasion, what does that mean in terms of experience they're looking for, their route to the consumer, what products are they going to buy, what price are they going to pay, what products are we going to sell, and how do we drive the premium? Diageo are exactly the same. Diageo recognise that occasions and understanding the occasion for consumption drives the fundamental elements of their marketing strategy and their portfolio strategy. And if you can see in the bottom chart of the Diageo point here, in their data on the path to purchase for their products, 47% of their shoppers thought about the intended occasion for consumption as the fundamental choice driver for what they're going to buy. But it's not just wine and spirits. It's also beer. And the biggest brewers in the world live off occasion-based insights to drive their segmentation strategies and to drive their frameworks. The challenge, however, has always been that to understand occasions would cost a fortune. Companies that specify and leverage this occasion-based segmentation can spend anywhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million on their occasion-based segmentation studies. So the investment they make in this is fundamental. So let's talk to marketing. At the end of the day, good marketers focus on consumers. If you want to drive growth, the only way to drive growth is getting consumers to behave differently to the way they behaved yesterday. Consumers buy from an available product pool that exists in the market. Every subcategory and every brand that's available is an opportunity to purchase for that particular consumer. But consumers recognize that they have different thoughts, different images, but also a limited capacity to navigate their way through the market, choose repertoires. Of all the available products in the marketplace, they choose a selection of products that they're interested in, that they become relatively loyal to, and they make their choices from their consumption repertoires. And is it fair to say that you would argue a good marketer's job is to get your product into their consumers' repertoire? And if that's what you believe, I think you've got marketers that are only doing about 25% of their job. Getting into the repertoire is nice. Pulling it out of the repertoire and into their hand and into their mouth is what's most important. And let me explain that a little bit further. If we take our consumer here, let's call her Jenny, and let's have a look at Jenny's busy Saturday. And maybe this is a busy weekend because I don't think we're going to talk about binge drinking to the level that Jenny did on this particular Saturday, but I'll take you on the journey plan that Jenny went through on this particular Saturday. First up, she went out for lunch with her girlfriends. So she chose on this particular day, her girlfriends chose to meet up at the local beer garden at their more contemporary pub. And the three of them got together and they decided that it was a sparkly day and they were going to share a bottle of Prosecco over lunch to lift their spirits and make them feel great. So they had Prosecco purchased from a bar at a pub, which was their first drink for the day. Jenny's husband came and picked her up after lunch because Jenny had also promised to go and visit her parents that day. And so on the way to visiting her parents, she knows her mum loves a gin and tonic. So she stopped at the Thirsty Camel, drove through and just ordered a 6-pack of gin and tonic. She paid $39 for this 6-pack of gin and tonic, even though she knows she could have bought it at Dan Murphy's for $25. She chose to pay $39 because on this particular day, it was an impulse purchase that she was buying on the way to her mum's place, and she was happy to pay that price premium. She took the gin and tonic in there. Her mum was excited. She embraced that. Jenny took a sip out of her glass. Her mum drank 3, her dad drank 2, and everybody was very, very happy with the choice of drink for that occasion. Having visited her parents, her husband took her home and she had a bit of her time. And during her time, she decided that she was going to cook a nice Saturday night dinner for the family. Jenny's a mum and she's got a young family. Now, in Jenny's household, her husband does most of the liquor shopping and would typically buy all of the wine for the cellar, and buy all of the beer and wine that they would have for any special occasions. But Jenny also has a sneaky little cask of Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc that she buys at Liquorland, and she keeps in the fridge as her cooking wine for when she buys it at Liquorland because it's attached to the supermarket when she does her weekly family shop. And at the back of the fridge there, she takes out a glass of her favourite Sauvignon Blanc and has it to herself while she's cooking dinner, just to reflect on the day that's been and to take the edge off the day from all the stresses that she had in all that socialising earlier on. Having cooked dinner, however, her husband was so excited and said, "What a wonderful meal we've got. I think we should celebrate with a nice glass of red." So he goes down into his wine fridge and picks out a bottle of red from the selection, opens it up, pours Jenny a small serve, and he takes his glass and probably tops it right up to the top. And the family sit down and have a chat about what's happening today and what's happening tomorrow and where they're going to go. Having enjoyed dinner, they then take the kids up and give them a bath and put them in their jammies, watch an episode of Bluey, and then put the kids to bed. And once the kids are gone to bed, it's Jenny and her husband's time. And they've decided they're going to spend Saturday night watching Netflix, and they're going to watch a movie. And watching the movie, Jenny decided that she was going to relax with a nice glass of Baileys on ice. And it's a Baileys on ice that she bought at the duty-free shop on her way back from Bali, because she wanted always to remember how wonderful her holiday was and to use that bottle of Baileys as a reminder of what it's like to truly relax when she has a holiday. And there's an average day for Jenny. What do we know about that is that Jenny made very different purchase choices for different occasions. Each occasion, even though she was the same consumer, each occasion she was consuming on drove a fundamental different need, with a fundamentally different purchase choice, with a fundamentally different price value proposition through a fundamentally different channel. And the way we would look at describing an occasion is that it's a way of bringing together all of the situational factors that coincide with the physical behaviour of consuming a product. Who are you and who are you with? When were you consuming? Why? What are the reasons for the occasion itself? What were you doing on this occasion? Were you eating? Did you have a meal? Were you dancing? Were you just relaxing? What was the mood of that occasion, and where were you consuming? Was it at your home? Was it at somebody else's home? Was it on a plane? Was it at the casino? Was it at the pub? All of those elements come together to give you a framework for the occasion. And I put it to you as well, remember that the occasion is not what you are doing. So many of our clients will talk to us about the meal occasion. We are going to target meals as our occasion. And I promise you, and I put it to you today, meals are not an occasion. Meals are what you do on an occasion. And if you think about meals, there are so many different types of meals that you would have in a day. The behaviour on those meals varies in such a way that you would consume fundamentally differently as well. Within the context of this occasion, each of these facets, individually and collectively, shape the category, the subcategory, the product, the format, the brand choices, and the pricing choices that are made for that particular consumption occasion. And so I put it to you that in beverages, it's the occasion that defines what the motivation is to buy, what the willingness is to pay, and the rationale behind why you choose to consume a product. So let's take Jenny and her girlfriends at the pub. Jenny has a repertoire of products from a potential product pool, but it's the consumption occasion, the choice to go to a pub beer garden, that drives the next part of the decision choice she's going through, because within that, there's only a small volume of the products available in the market that are available to be purchased there. And so now what we're looking for is the match between Jenny's consumption repertoire and the ranging in that pub, and hoping to find the two, but also recognising that Jenny's going to make the choice of what product from her repertoire, from the available range, best meets the needs not just of her, but of all of the other friends she has on that consumption occasion. And it's when you put the whole three of those together, do you get a world where consumers on occasions are drinking available subcategories from their repertoire. And I put it to you really simply. For a product to be consumed, it has to be in the consumer's repertoire. It has to be available when they're consuming. It has to be suitable for the occasion that they're consuming on. And that occasion has to occur. And unless your marketing guys are thinking about all of those elements, the probability that you're wasting a lot of your marketing spend is very, very high. Remember, in the world of advertising, the old line, I know I waste half of my marketing investment. The problem is I just don't know which half. Working through consumption occasions at least helps you to understand where is the half of your marketing that you're wasting, and how can I turn that marketing investment around to make it far more effective for me. And we saw that happening, and that's what our multinational players are doing, and that's what Coca-Cola or Schweppes or Cadbury, any major fast-moving consumer goods player does, to ensure that they get the best value for their marketing buck by targeting the right consumers with the right products at the right time for the right need. And that's what we're here to do. So I'll quickly introduce Growth Scope, and it was highlighted. I just want to let you know through 2 slides who we are and what we do, and I'll leave it at that before I go into the rest of our presentation. Growth Scope is new, and it's a unique product in the Australian marketplace. Actually, a unique product in the world. It's one of the only consumer-based U&A studies that are available for subscriptions in the market. As I said before, most major multinational companies invest in U&A studies every 3 or 4 years, and will spend somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, maybe even $1.5 million to undertake this research study. What we've done is spent that $1 million to create a database that you can buy into for much, much less than that. And in buying into that database, you get a view of who is the consumer, what is their occasion, what are they consuming, and if they were the shopper, how were they buying it? And that gives you a view, that gives you the opportunity to understand a wealth of insight that we have within our database. Who consumes, what do they consume, when do they consume, where do they consume, why do they consume, how much do they consume? But importantly, because we do this research every day, how has that changed to yesterday, last week, the week before, the month before, or last year? And what the changes mean by climate, by season, by month, or by economic circumstance, or by changed social circumstance, which I'll take you through in a bit more detail in a moment. If you have any questions about Growth Scope, or if you'd like to learn more about Growth Scope, please get in touch with the guys at Wine Communicators, who will introduce you back to me, and I'll be able to help you learn more about what we do and how we can help. So at the end of the ad, let's talk about a framework for defining those consumption occasions. First things first, occasions don't shop, occasions don't buy, and occasions don't consume. At the end of the day, if you want to change and grow your business, the only way to grow your business is getting people to do something different to what they did yesterday. And the only thing that you can do to get people to do something different to what you did yesterday is to change their behaviour. You can get more people, you can get people to buy more often, you can get people to buy more per occasion, you get people to pay more for what they consume, you get people to drink your product instead of your competitor's product. But those changes in behaviour only happen by changing people's behaviour. And consumption occasions are what shape the behaviour of people in liquor. If you don't understand the occasion, it's highly unlikely that you're understanding how you're going to change consumers' behaviour. And if you can't understand how to change consumer behaviour, the probability is that the money that you're spending on changing that behaviour is unlikely to land as well as it could. You're not getting the full value from every dollar that you're spending in marketing. We like to look at occasions, and lots of people have different ways of looking at occasions. There are so many different models for understanding occasions. We like to look at occasions through a really simple landscape, which is, who am I? What's my age? And do I have children living with me? And who am I with? What sort of group am I with? Am I alone? Am I in a small group, a medium group, or a large group? And what is the relationship that I have with the people in that group? Is it me? Is it my partner? Is it my family? Is it a group of friends or colleagues? And let's go back to Jenny. Remember, we spoke about Jenny's day. Jenny is a parent with children. And as a parent with children, on that particular Saturday, she had 5 different consumption occasions. And those 5 different consumption occasions were driven by 5 different social contexts. She drank Chardonnay on her own. She drank Baileys with her husband at a quality time. She drank Baileys with her husband as a just us time. She had quality time with the family where her and her husband shared a bottle of wine. She had fun with friends when she was sharing Prosecco at the pub. And she went to a family do with her parents where she shared some gin and tonic. Each of those fundamentally different, each of those in their own right, independent markets. None of the others are reliant on the first. They're mutually exclusive, but not only are they mutually exclusive, all 5 of those represent 100% of Jenny's drink consumption for that particular day. And if we multiply that out by the 20 million or so legal drinking age consumers in Australia, we can then draw a view of the world that is 36 particular cells that define 100% of the Australian liquor market and 100% of the consumption occasions in that. Now, we think 36 is a little bit too large and a little bit too unwieldy and a little bit too difficult to get around, so we cluster them up. And what we've created is 13 mutually exclusive yet collectively exhaustive liquor occasions. These occasions are all independent. You don't drink in two, you can drink in 2 of these occasions, but you never drink in 2 of these occasions at the same time, which means that you can add up all 13 of these occasions to give you a view of what the total market represents. And importantly, by looking at the world through these occasions or these segments of occasions provide us with a data cube that we can get a full understanding around. So for each consumption occasion, we can understand the hard metrics that can be tracked. How many people, how often, how much, what price. And if we multiply those 4 variables out, how big is it? How much is it worth? And because we're tracking it over time, how has it changed? Is it bigger this year than last year or smaller this year than last year for my category or for my brand or for my retail outlet? Beyond the hard metrics, you can also understand what is the channel choice? Where did I shop for my product? Am I buying it on-prem or off-prem? Is it big box or bottle shops or wherever else? And what's the shopping behaviour? What shopper mission did I have when I purchased the product for this occasion? Was it a top-up shop? Was it a big shop? Was it a basket shop? Was it a special visit? Was it a choice to buy on impulse? And finally, we can also understand who the consumer is and the activities and needs on that occasion. What was I doing? Was I eating? Was I chatting? Was I dancing? Was I gambling? Was I just watching television? And what did I want to achieve? What were my needs? Was I looking to relax? Was I looking to savor? Was I looking to connect? Was I looking to build my brand image? Was I just looking for potency to take the edge off the day? Whatever my needs are, vary by occasion. Whatever my activities are, vary by occasion. Where I shop varies by occasion. How much I pay varies by occasion. Understanding the occasion gives you the key to understand how to unlock growth. And if we look at our growth scope model, sorry, I keep looking up because I've got multiple screens going at the moment. If we look at our growth scope model of occasions, our 13 occasions all vary in size. And you can see I've put the 5 occasions that Jenny participated in on that Saturday to give you a feel for what's going on. There are personal occasions and social occasions. Interestingly, you'll see here that personal occasions are about the same size as social occasions. And when I say personal occasions, that's when I drink alone or just with my partner, alone or with one other, as a personal occasion versus a social occasion when I'm drinking with friends or with family or in larger groups. And so recognizing the importance of those is paramount. Let's also remember where you think the money is not necessarily where it always is. Reward time for us, which are retirees drinking alone or with their partner, represent 10% of the total liquor consumption occasions. Just 1% below family time meal occasions. So let's have a look into those occasions in a little more detail. And I can't go through all 13 because that will take us hours and hours and hours. But what we can do is have a look at a couple of them just to get a feel. So I'll pick 2 of the occasions that we saw Jenny going through the other day. One is just the parents, so her and her husband. The second is celebrations, her meeting with a large group of people for a major event. Let's say a wedding or a 21st or a Christmas Day lunch as an example. Each of those occasions is fundamentally different. And let me demonstrate how that difference manifests in what they consume, where they purchase, and how much they pay. So let's look at just couples drinking together. Who's the consumer just drinking together. 57% of people are female just drinking together, and 58% of them are aged 40 to 69. On these occasions, beer is the #1 product consumed, followed by Shiraz, followed by mid-strength beer. And these occasions typically happen in the off-premise. 88% of just the parents, couples drinking together occasions happen off-prem, 12% on-prem. And the real fundamental reason for use is to relax and unwind and de-stress for 51% of people on those occasions. They're looking to have time for me, and they're looking to savour that drink. On these occasions, they drink about 3.6 serves per occasion. So let's say three to four beers, 3 to 4 glasses of wine, 3 to 4 shots of whiskey or vodka. Just the parents is different to celebrations. Yeah, celebrations again is 58% female. 62% are aged 40 to 69 as well. But look at what they drink. On this last occasion, beer is the #1 product, but high up the ranking there is vodka. And for you wine guys, this is where sparkling wine starts to really show its stripes. Sparkling wine is a much more social occasion. Also, the location changes dramatically. 39% of celebration occasions happen in the on-prem, where 61% happen off-prem, at my home or somebody else's home. And relax and unwind needs diminished dramatically. It was over 50% for just the parents. It's only 30% for these occasions. And remember, wine, beer, spirits, any alcoholic beverage, the functional benefit of alcohol is to unwind and relax. And so for any occasion, relax and unwind is always, it's the category raison d'etre. It's the reason people drink alcohol in the first instance. And so that's why it's always very large. But on these celebration accounts, catching up and bonding with friends is more important at 38% and celebration at 33%. And look at how much they drink, 5.9 serves on average per occasion. They drink twice as much at a celebration than they drink when they're drinking at home alone with their parents or with their partner. And if we look at the shopper, because remember the shopper and the consumer are two different people. Sometimes the shopper and the consumer is the same, but quite often the shopper makes the choice. The consumer drinks what was chosen for them by the shopper, and they have an influence in that. In terms of shopper for just the parents, it's almost 50-50 male or female. But when I get to celebrations, you can see all of a sudden females, the woman in the household, is more likely to be the purchaser for the celebration. If we look at the age group of that shopper, for just the parents' occasion, more likely to be 25 to 39, because that's the age that you have kids. If it's celebration, however, you're more likely to be in the 50 to 69-year-old age group. It's more likely that the patriarch or the matriarch, because it's the mother or the grandmother, the matriarch of the family is the more likely purchase decision maker for a celebration. She'll choose which restaurant, which pub, and she'll choose the menu and she'll choose the product range, or she'll go to Dan Murphy's and choose what to buy for that Christmas dinner at home. Very different to just the parents, where we'll see a greater impact of the supermarket attached liquor store or the bottle shop versus what we'd see in the celebrations occasion. But the big difference there is the role of big box, where big box retail outlets for celebrations over-index on that for just the parents by a factor of about 25%. And the second big difference was the role of online. We can see online purchases represent about 12% of shoppers for just the parents, but just 6% for celebrations. So that tells us that people, when they're shopping for a celebration, are more likely to choose off a menu or to go into a store to choose what they want and what they're looking for. But it's not just what they buy, it's also when they buy that's important. Just the parents shopper is more likely to have purchased their product up to or more than a week before the consumption occasion. And they do that because their key reason for purchase is to stock up, as you can see, but 57%. Celebrations, on the other hand, are much more likely to be purchased on the day of or the day before the event. And the reason for that is because it's a much more planned purchase, and people are planning for that event or party in 50% of occasions. And on that celebration occasion, you can see what I like to drink significantly over-indexes relative to just the parents. People portray and bring their own image, needs, and their own preferences to the table when they're choosing to buy for a celebration. And that plays out in terms of what people choose to consume as well. So the categories consumed for just the parents' occasion, as I said, beer, followed by Shiraz, mid-strength, whiskey, Sauv Blanc, vodka down the bottom. Flip that across to celebrations. Beer, again, is number one. Beer is number one for every occasion. Followed by vodka. Sparkling wine comes up high, followed by mid-strength, Scotch, and Shiraz. We also see coming into this mix Moscato. And Moscato gets a win because of its sweetness, but also its lower alcohol base. And if we look at what's happening over time for these two occasions, what we can see is that wine and beer have both been in decline for just the parents' occasions and for celebration occasions. But in celebrations, the decline has been much greater, especially for wine. Counter to that is the growth of spirits and RTDs, which have grown on just the parents' occasions, but have grown at an even faster rate for celebrations occasions. And later today, I'll take you through an example of how we're able to dissect what people are looking for on occasions and how that occasions drives the category of choice, the subcategory of choice, and the product of choice. All of this is really valuable, but unless you have hard metrics to tell you what's going on and how big is the size of the opportunity and which variables drive that change in occasions, it's really hard to be able to start focusing your marketing effort around which behaviour change you're looking to manifest against. And in that world, we have a framework which we call our marketing metrics. Any market is a function of how many people consume, times by how often they consume, how much they consume per occasion, and how much they pay. And if we add all of those things together, we get a view for the relative size of that market and the relative attractiveness of that. What we can see here is just the parents' occasions happen on average 8.7 times a month, where large celebrations happen on average about 1.6 times a month. In other words, the frequency of celebrations is significantly less than the frequency of just the parents' occasions. Even though on those celebrations they drink nearly twice as much and they pay 25% more for what they drink. But because they do it so much less often, the relative attractiveness of a consumer for celebrations or the occasion of celebrations is significantly less at 34 versus just the parents at 92. I think that's a simple way to understand it. The attractiveness of an occasion is a function of how many people do it, how often they do it, how much they have when they do it, and how much they pay for the occasion to consume. And being able to manifest and affect all of those gives you the opportunity to, as Coca-Cola do, shift the demand curve in your favour. So we open this with a presentation around how consumption occasions drive shopping behaviour. And the thing to realise is that without consumption, there is no need to buy. And that consumption happens on a consumption occasion. And so therefore, differences in the way consumers engage with occasions drives differences in the way that they shop for those occasions. And that simple framework is manifest in the way that many retailers are now looking at the liquor category and how the liquor category can drive growth for them and how they're able to drive differential growth to their competitors. Let's have a look at cider as an example. In the cider category, you can see across those 13 consumption occasions, cider is much more likely to be consumed on occasions that are social in nature. And the biggest social occasions are youth, under 18 to 24s in large groups, or professional gatherings, which are 24 to 40-year-olds in large groups. Over 25% of total cider category consumption happens on those two occasions. Add to that parents' night off and celebrations, coupled with family time, we're getting to well over 50% of all cider consumption. If we spoke about sparkling wine, you would see a very similar trend for sparkling wine. If we spoke about red wine or Shiraz, you would see the opposite. Shiraz playing less of a role on social occasions, far more of a greater role on these one-on-one or alone time consumption occasions. But let me take this cider example a little bit further. Different occasions drive different needs. So for cider, different occasions drive different choices of channel to shop in. A consumer who's going through Wash Away My Worries is more likely to buy their cider at a bottle shop. Those retirees drinking cider alone are more likely to shop at a big box. The youthful gathering of 18 to 24-year-olds are much more likely to get their cider from the pub, whereas the family time occasion is much more likely to have their cider purchased at a supermarket attached liquor store. Different occasions drive different channel choices. Different occasions also drive different shopper missions. Reward time for us. The oldies drinking alone are more likely to buy their stock on a major stock-up shop. Wash Away My Worries, which are baby boomers drinking alone, are more likely to pick it up at a small regular shop. And family time occasions, drinking with the family meal, are more likely, the cider is more likely to be purchased when I was out browsing on impulse. Each of those then manifests in different promotional attributes that play a role. People buying for Wash Away My Worries have a higher probability of purchasing on special. But just the parents shoppers buy on special, but the special didn't influence their purchase dramatically. Reward time for us consumers are over-focused on finding the discount and getting that special, whereas professional gatherings bought it on special, but it was only part of the reason. They actually purchased the Somersby they would ordinarily have bought, but maybe they switched the flavour or the pack format to be able to get the size that they're looking for. And all of this manifests in recognising that different occasions drive a very different willingness to pay. I said before, youthful gatherings and professional gatherings had the highest penetration, but on those particular gatherings, people are willing to pay 20% above the average price of cider to consume on those occasions. Whereas on reward time for us, which are retirees drinking alone or with their partner, they're willing to pay 23% less than the average price for cider when they're drinking on those occasions. And that has an impact on what is the format, the price point, the promotional strategy, and the way you execute in store. And ultimately, the different occasions also drive fundamentally different choices in pack sizes and format of purchase. Reward time for us in youthful gatherings are much more likely to be a 6-pack. Parents' night off and free to be social are much more likely to be a 10-pack. Different packs, different formats, different needs for different occasions. And think about that within the world of wine, the role of casks, 4-litre cask, 2-litre cask, 1-litre cask, Magnums, or is it a 750ml glass? Or is it a 700ml glass if that was available, or an 800ml glass if that was available to differentiate? So let me put it to you in this really simple view of the world. If you want to maximise your sales, it's important that you take time to identify what occasions exist in the market that you participate in, and how do you segment those occasions to identify the key consumption occasions that exist. Of all those consumption occasions which exist, which are the most important for each of your brands? Of the ones that are most important for your brands, then dive deep. Understand who's consuming, what's they're consuming, who they're consuming with, why are they consuming, when are they consuming, and how much are they consuming, so that you can get a view and build a portrait of who your ideal consumer is on your key target occasion. And with that information, you can then move to executing both your shopper plans and your consumer marketing strategies against those needs and behaviours, targeting the right consumer at the right time in the right way. And importantly, if that works for you and you drive growth, track that performance and adapt your strategies, because things never stay the same. Consumer needs are changing, consumers are changing, the environment is changing, which is changing the way people shop and the way people buy and the way people behave. And if you keep tracking that information, as we do in Growth Scope, and keep your eye on what's going on, you're able to stay ahead of the curve. So on that note, we're about 45 minutes into the presentation. As I said, I have a second section I'd like to present, but before I go into that presentation, I thought I could open the floor to any questions that we've got, or see if there's any other questions that people would like to come to.
Thank you, Andrew. While we're waiting for questions to come through, I have a question for you, and it's a bit of a random one, but I'm good at random questions.
Good.
I love some of the titles of the categories that you've got, like the drinking alone people and things like that. Where did they come from?
I made them up. I made them up, and literally, I mean, we just give them names because it's a much more easier way to discuss them than it is to say, you know, 18 to 24s drinking in groups. I could just say, well, that's a youthful gathering.
Yes. Yeah.
And by giving them pet names, it lets brand managers that are targeting those pets, those occasions or those segments, a bit of license to bring them to life for their customers and for their stakeholders.
Absolutely. I love some of them. I can actually resonate with many of them. Look, there hasn't been any questions come through, and I'm really interested personally in the case study. So I think we just roll straight into that, if you don't mind.
Ooh,
And if
no
any
problem.
questions pop up, I can ask them in a minute.
No worries. Now I'll take a stop at one, just for people to hang up, and I'll just keep going through. If I do keep going through, hopefully I can finish it in the next 15 or so minutes. So we'll see how we go.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. So here's a case study. Understanding some of the market challenges by looking through an occasion lens. So let's go back in time to 2022. And the issue was that there was a major big box retailer who claimed that wine was losing shares to other alcohol categories because many boomers had left the wine category and had moved to RTDs and spirits. Now, for Wine Communicators of Australia, I can assure you that that's a problem. But for this particular big box retailer, that was also a really big problem because big box retailers over-index with boomers, and therefore that retailer is far more vulnerable to a shift in that market. And it's really, really big. For every boomer that this big box retailer lost, the market needed to recruit 4 more new other consumers into the wine category. So we set about understanding what was going on here. What are the changes in the market, when the behaviour, and where is the volume in the market going? Was it more of a red issue, a white issue, or a sparkling wine problem? And why are consumers changing their behaviour? Why are they reducing their spend in wine, and why are they shifting, as they may have been, into RTDs and spirits? And identify some starting platform to help develop some potential initiatives that could help recover this consumption of boomers, which is also important. So let's start with a bit of data. First things first. Of 50 to 69-year-olds consuming, spirits had increased while wine had decreased. You can see here that over the course of the timetable from the middle of the COVID, or from the beginning of COVID right through until Q1 2022, different categories had different trajectories. Beer had increased, spirits had increased dramatically, and all the 3 key wine categories had suffered declines, with penetration of sparkling wine moving down from a peak of 16% from Christmas 2020 down to 8% in January 2022. Red wine from a peak of 28% in Q3 2020 down to 22%. And white wine from 20% down to 21%, holding relatively steady. So what we saw was the long-term trend for red, white, and sparkling wine was down, and the long-term trend for beer and spirits was definitely up. Red wine, however, was the most concerning of the 3 categories. And we saw that by looking at year-on-year results. So how was each of these categories performing year-on-year in Q1, year-on-year in Q4, and year-on-year Q3? sorry, Q3, Q4, and Q1 year on year. And year on year, we could see that, you know, for Q3, beer was up, Q4 beer was up, and Q1 beer was down. Red wine, however, was down in every quarter, which was quite concerning, especially when you would consider that Q3 is the key period for red wine consumption in the darkest depths of winter. And it was still down. And the growth was going into spirits. Spirits up in Q3, up in Q1, and suffered a little bit in Q4. That tells us that red wine was consistently down. White wine recovered most in the most recent quarter. White and sparkling saw huge penetration strikes in Q4. And if those of you remember, Q4 2020 was the COVID-free Christmas. And for those of you living in Victoria, that was when Dan Andrews, who had locked us down, said that we could go and have Christmas dinner with our families. And we all went and celebrated with a bottle of sparkling wine or champagne. And spirits was down in Q4 21, but over the previous 4 quarters had achieved significant growth against these 50 to 69-year-old consumers. Not only did these 50 to 69 consumers leave the category, but those who remained in the category were paying less on average than they did the year before. So people were spending less and there were less consumers. I put it to you that they were spending less probably because the players in the market had to discount more to try to recover the losses that they were suffering. And so wine as a category became cheaper because wine players decided to fight more with price to address the declines that the market was suffering. But that's nice to know it declined. Great, we've proven that. How can we get to why did this decline? And how can we use occasions to unpack the wine behind this shift in consumption? So as I've spoken to you before, our marketing metrics framework looks at 4 different key metrics. Penetration, the number of consumers who consume. Frequency, the average number of similar occasions that happen in a given month. Intensity, the average number of serves consumed on that occasion. And price, the relative price paid for consumption on that occasion. And if you multiply all 4 of those together, what you get is the size of the market. The number of people, times they drink, the amount that they drink, and the price they pay is a way of calculating how big is any given market. We've been tracking these metrics since June 2020, and they can be viewed in aggregate for any of our growth scope data. So we can look at these metrics by retailer, by brand, by manufacturer, but we can also look at them by occasion, by need, or by activity. And so in this world, we can look at it from an occasion lens. And we can also track what's happening on these occasions over time, providing better accountability across the category teams and the marketing teams and the sales teams within an organisation. So let's go back to 2022 and the total value of these growth scope consumption occasions for total alcohol. Family time during 2022 was by far the biggest consumption occasion, representing 15.6% of total value of the liquor category. The second biggest category, or the second biggest occasion, was time out. That is parents drinking alone, believe it or not. Parents drinking alone at 12% of the total liquor market, followed by sundowners, baby boomers drinking with their parents, baby boomers drinking with their partners. And that represented 10% of the total liquor market. When combined with time out, 27% of the total liquor market in 2 occasions. Which of these occasions over or under index for wine as wine players? And what we could see happening was that sundowners and reward time for us are the 2 biggest over-indexing consumption occasions for wine. All other consumption occasions, except for just the parents, as well as just the parents and golden time. Golden time's retirees going out. Just the parents we spoke of before. That's parents, the 2 parents drinking alone. They're where wine plays its greatest relative impact. Wine under indexes in all other occasions, and it under-indexes most predominantly on youth occasions. Youthful gatherings and professional gatherings being people 25 to 40 in large groups, chilling out, which is under 40s drinking alone or with one other, and time out, which is parents drinking alone. And on those occasions, wine under-indexes. If we look at, this is 2022 data as well, I bring to your attention. In 2024, the market has changed dramatically. But in 2022, when we looked at this, we could see that across total liquor, mid-sized parents and older occasions were about 52% of total liquor, but 61% of total wine. And solo, youth and celebration occasions were 48% of total liquor and only 39% of total wine. And we can see that wine's share of these occasions varies dramatically across the group. So wine's share of chilling out occasions is less than a quarter, whereas wine's share of family time is more than half. So now it gets a little bit more complex. And we can look at all 13 occasions and understand what's changing. And what's the big aha point out of this was that in 2022, although the total wine market was down, wine was down in some occasions, but was actually up in others. So wine penetration saw growth in 25 to 40-year-old consumer groups, social gatherings. Wine also saw, it held on reward time for us, or old consumers drinking with their partners, and also saw a relatively stable position with baby boomers drinking alone and retirees drinking in social occasions. Where wine suffered its greatest losses were professional gatherings, chilling out time, celebrations, family time, parents' night off, and time out time. And what's really important to recognise is that even though wine was off 5% in family time, the relative size of family time meant that the bulk of wine's declines in 2022 could be attributed to the family time occasion. But we're interested in baby boomers, because that was what our brief was. Baby boomers sort of fit across this landscape in these segments here, or on these occasions. And let's focus on one of these occasions so we can demonstrate for you how understanding occasions can get to the nub of what's happening in a market, so you can get to the nub of what you can do to address that or redress that market. And I'm going to focus on free to be social. Now remember, free to be social, they're empty nesters, older parents, the kids are off their hands pretty much, and they get the chance to go out and have fun with friends. They might have a dinner party. This might be a dinner party. This might be just a couple of couples going out for dinner. It might be a mid-sized group of people enjoying company. These people are 52% female, 48% male. They're all aged between 40 and 69. In other words, they're all in this boomer category. On these occasions, they predominantly drink beer, but they also drink mid-strength beer, and their wine of choice was Sauvignon Blanc. On-premise is on average, with the total marketplace, on-premise consumption is about 30% of total consumption, 70% is off-prem. So these occasions are happening within the market paradigm for on versus off-prem. And the fundamental need being conceived is to catch up and bond with friends. And when they're together on these occasions, they're drinking about 4 serves of alcohol, which could be a one beer, 2 wines, and let's say an aperitif or a shot of whiskey at the end. So let's look at what's happened. If we compare 2021 to 2022, what we can look at is where the changes are. And we're trying to keep this as simple, so we're color coding and we have numbers. What is the difference in penetration for each category in free to be social or free to be social consumption occasions by category? And the first thing that we saw was that these consumption occasions saw an increase in beer consumption, an increase in spirits consumption, an increase in white wine consumption, and reductions in both red wine and sparkling wine. So wine was the loser year on year in free-to-be social occasions. The key wine categories consumed saw sparkling wine down, Cab Sav down, Riesling down. Fortunately, Rosé and Chardonnay both had growth. We also saw a shift in channel. Off-premise consumption occasions were down by 3%. On-premise consumption occasions increased by 3%. Where they had those off-premise occasions, because we're interested in big box retailers, so it was an off-premise consumption opportunity, what had changed? And the big change was that people were less likely to be spending time with family, less likely to be having a holiday celebration on these occasions, and less likely to eat a meal. What they're more likely to be doing is spending time with friends and more likely to be having an after-work drink. And on these occasions, their key need was to catch up and bond with friends, increased by 6%, and less likely to celebrate, more likely to have time for me. And from a functional need perspective, they were less likely to be showing off with premium or prestigious needs, and more likely to choose beverages that didn't give them a hangover and that were easy drinking. And on these occasions, what were they doing? Well, more likely to be on their computer or smartphone. If they're on their smartphone, think about that as they're highly likely to be gambling, or they're highly likely to be posting, or they took a break and had me time. The time of day was more likely to be after work and after dinner, less likely to be pre-dinner, less likely to be lunch. And the day a week change saw a move to Saturdays away from Fridays and an increase in midweek as opposed to Sundays. All of that comes together, we can then start seeing what's happening with wine relative to spirits. So the way to think about what I'm about to show you, to add a level of complexity, and I'm sorry, it's 2:02 at this point, so if you have to leave, please leave, and I'll just keep going for the next 5 or 10 minutes and get to the end. Where does wine over or index against spirits at the top 5 biggest areas of absolute change on the free-to-be social occasion? If you're looking to spend time with family, you're more likely to want to drink wine. So wine is green. A holiday celebration can be wine or spirits. If you're eating a main meal, you're more likely to drink red wine or more likely to drink wine. If you're spending time with friends or having an after-work drink, you're more likely to drink spirits, because spirits better meet the needs of consumers on those occasions, whereas wine better meets the needs of consumers who are eating a meal or spending time with family. Top emotional needs are catch up or bond with friends is important for wine. Time for me is not. If you want to make the moment special, you're more likely to choose wine. And from a functional need perspective, if you want to avoid a hangover, it's less likely you'll choose wine. If you want something that goes down easy and is easy drinking, you're less likely to choose wine and more likely to choose spirits. If you're looking for something to savour or enjoy, you're more likely to choose wine. And if I take this conversation all the way through, what we can see are the trends of how wine is less attractive to the consumer on their changed occasion based upon the people that they're with. In summary, there are only 3 cells in this whole chart where wine over-indexes on a parameter that's in growth. By and large, the market was against wine for this consumption occasion in 2022 because consumers on these occasions had needs that were far better appropriated by spirits. And they voted with their dollars and chose spirits as a result. Fewer people, what we had was an over-index on a declining reason. So this is where fewer people in this demand zone had drinking occasions to spend time with the family because that was in decline, and wine over-indexed on this occasion. We also had the other double negative. More people within the demand zone had drinking occasions to spend time with friends, which was an increasing reason for the occasion. However, wine under-indexed on the ability to satisfy this need on this occasion. And all of this you can see manifests in how changes in the market come to life. Spending time with friends is more likely to be satisfied with a spritz than it is with a pure wine. And hence the growth of spritz and the role of spritzes, such as an Aperol spritz or even a Zoncello, have been able to play into these changes in consumer needs over time to be able to better satisfy what's happening in the marketplace. So if you take this about getting to why, there's some fundamental outcome of all of this. In 2022, boomers left wine in favour of spirits because of a number of different factors. In the free-to-be social occasion that changed from 21 to 22, what we saw was a decrease on spending time with family, an increase in spending time with food, a decrease of the number of occasions that had food, an increase in the number of people having drinks after work, increase in the number of people getting together for this occasion on a Saturday, and a decrease on Friday. And wine's overexposure to the parameters that are in decline drove a shift away from the category. In other words, people in the wine category were swimming against the tide. The tide was going out, and that tide was shifting across to spirits because spirits were better able to satisfy the needs of the consumers on those occasions. Affecting change here will require people's changing underlying roles of the consumption occasions. Moving these consumption occasions to be more reliant on food will have an increasing impact on the role of wine. Getting people to go to friends' houses rather than to pubs and clubs will have, again, the opportunity to switch people from spirits back into wine, because spirits were overexposed and were able to capitalise on the occasion parameters that were growing, which enabled that shift to move towards that particular category. And we can talk about winners and losers. If we talk about swimming against the tide, there were winners within the wine category. If I look at social context for total wine between 2021 and 2022, what we saw was that wine that was drunk on fun with friends occasions saw growth, whereas wine for all other needs or social context needs was in decline. Wine that delivered against easy drinking parameters also saw increases, while all others were flat or in decline. In terms of flavours or varietals, we can see here that the winners in wine were Sauvignon Blanc, Moscato, other sparkling, and Prosecco. Sauvignon Blanc, Moscato, where's Moscato? Sauvignon Blanc, Moscato, and sparkling. And by refocusing on growing occasions, what we saw was companies like Brown Family Wine have been able to buck the trend of the declining categories. By having a higher proportion and a better mix of categories, they were able to buck the trend and grow in what was a fundamentally declining market for all other players in the industry. And it was occasion-based understanding and occasion-based marketing that enabled them to get the full value of that, plus recognising that they had a portfolio that was positioned to take advantage of those occasions over this time change. So in summary, without consumption, there is no need to purchase. Consumption occurs on occasions, and differences in the way consumers engage with occasions drives differences in the way they shop. And if you want to leverage occasions to growth and to grow your sales, we give you a 4-stage process. Identify the occasions that are important to you, prioritise them for yourself, understand how you want to play against that occasion by understanding what are the consumer's needs on those occasions, through which channels, at which price point, and then go and execute against them. And execute on 3 dimensions. Build awareness of your offer by getting into the repertoire, influence what needs to happen at the point of buying or the point of purchase, and then ensure that your product is consumed, because it's only by consumption that do you create the opportunity for people to come back into the market and buy your product again next time. And then sure that you track those metrics so you can understand what's changing so that you can adjust your plans looking forward. And on that note, I bring the presentation to a conclusion. Say thank you to everyone, and if there are any more questions or any other comments, I'm here to take them.
Thank you, Andrew. There are a couple of questions that have come through throughout the presentation. One is that the case study that has just been put forward, and thank you for that, doesn't include or consider zero alcohol category. So the suggestion might be that boomer consumption has declined, but it's shifted towards a new product category, which is the non-alc spirits and or beer. Do you have any insights in that?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you first and foremost, right? The total size of the non-alc category, so zero alcohol brands, is still minuscule. I think it's $147 million out of what is a $5 billion market. So the shift across to those non-alcoholic brands, yes, is nice, and it has been valuable to some players, but in the scheme of the total market, it's a rounding error. So I don't believe you would attribute it to that. The second thing is that we know is that the growth in non-alcoholic beverages has plateaued. It's now, it was 147, it might be maybe getting to $200 million. And what we're seeing is retailers are now pulling back and withdrawing many of the listings they've got for that because it's not achieving anywhere near the growth rates that people were looking for.
Well, that's a really good segue to the next question that I have, and it's regarding small-scale wineries that are not FMCG type brands and rely heavily on cellar doors and online. Can you show the listeners how they can use your theories?
Well, the first is they're not theories; they're data-driven facts, and we're providing data around these. The thing is to understand what occasions you're targeting and merchandise to those occasions and ensure your offering derives to that occasion. So recognize that if you've got a cellar door and you specialize in sparkling wines, you're automatically going to be focused more on social occasions. The way you market, the way you present, the way you deliver your cellar door offering has to be more towards socializing. If you're a full-on, full-bodied Shiraz producer, or your wine is full-bodied, heavy drinking, food-based wines, you're more likely to be selling wines for cellaring that are going to be used for consumption with special meals and special meal occasions. So target and drive your focus around that, and think about food marketing and accompaniments as a way of building the proposition for you to be much more successful in those areas. Also recognize that this has a really important role as a cellar door player for your direct-to-consumer activation, your online programs. Thinking about online, a classic one for me is if most people, when they partition their online retail offering, they do it by flavour, by variety, or by product. Remember, consumers don't buy products, they buy products for occasions. And if you think of other great online websites, let's take fashion as an example. Fashion websites are pretty much more focused on differentiating or segmenting their website by the occasion you're shopping for. So maybe consider online thinking about what occasion you're shopping for and what products then satisfy that occasion. And maybe people are shopping online to shop, for example, there'll be people who shop online for cellaring. There'll be people who shop online for special occasions. There'll be people who shop online for major events. And if you could target your offerings and segment your offerings on your online offer or in your cellar door offer to those different occasions, you may be able to help and uptrade people to a more expensive offering on those occasions, as an example.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. There's a couple more questions. How much are the stats in your case study impacted by the pandemic? And what is the state of wine growth or / decline in 2023-24?
The pandemic had an effect on everything. And the 2022, 2021, 2020 was driven by that. 2022 had people coming out of home. So wine, the halcyon days, the glory days for wine were in the middle of the pandemic. I'll be honest, because nobody could go out, nobody had to drive, everybody was sitting at home and everybody was having meals. And what do you drink when you're having meals with family and friends? Wine. What do you drink when you don't have to drive? Wine. What do you drink at home when you're alone with your partner? Wine. So wine was the winner in the pandemic. We come out of the pandemic, socializing opens up. We've now got to drive our kids to football practice. We've got to pick them up from school. We've got to be pretty solid and stable in what we do. We go out socializing with friends. Now I've got a social responsibility, because if I drank a bottle of wine with my wife, I could just fall asleep on the couch. But if I drink a bottle of wine with my wife and friends at a restaurant, now I'm making a fool of myself. And so in that world, I'm going to be far more focused and recognize, spirits have high alcohol and we perceive them as high alcohol. But knowing that when we buy a spirits or a cocktail and we mix them, the likelihood is we're drinking a product which has got a 5% ABV versus a 14% ABV for red wine. And so when people are socializing, they're looking to be a little bit more in control, and spirits and beer and mid-strength beer provide vehicles for being in control socially in a socially acceptable way that wine doesn't deliver. So as people move to more social occasions, wine was the loser. So yeah, the pandemic had a fundamental play on that. But that's in our rear vision mirror now. We're looking at what's happening in these couple of years. Yeah, we know lots of stuff about how the category is performing this year. Unfortunately, I can't give it away, because if I give it away, then I don't get to pay my kids' school fees.
It's a good leader into where do you see the future of red wine consumption and its respective occasions once the boomer generation move on? Poor old boomers.
The thing is, right, think about life. The old cradle to grave theory is, I think, a load of hogswallop, because I think of me, right? I'm not a boomer yet. I'm shy of being a boomer. I love a good glass of red. When I was 18, I hated a glass of red. I would always drink a bottle of Bundy, a glass of Bundy and Coke or something. As we age and as we grow up, our needs change, our palates change, our social occasions change. We go in and out of categories. Boomers might go away, but as boomers go, the next generation will come through, and the next generation will have the same social occasions, the same needs, the same palates, and the same approach, and they will have those same needs. There'll be less of them because there's less boomers. So red wine will be a lesser category as a result, because there's just less people. But the frequency, the intensity, the price paid, and the volume consumed per person should be the same.
Okay, and I might just ask this last question. There's a lot of people saying thank you and they've enjoyed the presentation, they've had to leave. But there is a question here. You mentioned that in 2024, the market has changed dramatically from the data shown from 2022. Can you please expand on this? And are the overarching trends consistent, simply more pronounced over time, or have some of the insights shifted in your view?
The insights have shifted, no question. People have changed. Their needs have changed. The market's changed. The fundamental difference between 2022 and now is cost of living implications. There's a significant issue in cost of living, and that's having one adverse effect. The other big adverse effect that we're seeing happening in the market is the increasing prevalence and rate of abstention. In the last 3 years, 6% of legally LDA, legal drinking age consumers, 6% of legal drinking age consumers have stopped drinking alcohol altogether. That's the biggest impact on the decline in the market. It's been the biggest, that's a far bigger impact than the issue of cost of living. The second thing that we know from our data is when we correlate cost of living with the need for alcohol, there's an inverse relationship. Cost of living actually drives an increase in alcohol consumption. It just drives a change in the price paid for that consumption. So you'll see inevitably an increase in the proportion of cask wine being sold versus bottled wine. As an example, in the wine category, you'll see a lot more cheaper beers, you'll see a lot more cheaper spirits and RTDs. You'll see a switch from categories as well. So yeah, in terms of the total market, yeah, we've got all of that data. But I'll be honest, we sell that data, so it's difficult for us to give it away.
Sure, no worries.
I'm sure you'd understand that the clients that we have that pay for that data would feel quite upset with me for giving away something that they pay me for.
Absolutely. Look, there's no more questions, Andrew, and that's fully understandable, I'm sure, by everybody. There's some lovely comments on the side here about people saying thank you. It's a fantastic presentation, and I concur with their thoughts and their words. So thank you very much for a very informative presentation. We really appreciate you sharing the knowledge that you're able to share with us and your time today. Thank you also to everybody who has attended and registered for this event, and you will be sent out a recording, I think, within the next 24 hours. Our next webinar will be held in July. We don't have the presenter nailed down yet, but I am told it's about leadership and people management, and that'll be in July. But in August, it's actually on the 13th of August, we'll be hearing from Wine Australia, who are presenting their export market update, hot off the press, I am told. I hope that you have really enjoyed today's presentation. I know that I certainly have. There are a couple of events coming up on the 21st of June. Please, love to see you all at the Direct to Consumer Concert Summit being held in Sydney. I'll be there, and I look forward to seeing you all. And of course, the Wine Communicator of the Year Awards will be open very soon. So please keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for everybody attending, and have a great week. See you all soon.